Good evening. Welcome everyone to the Hilltop Outreach Institute workshop series. My name is Becky Krieger. I am the outreach coordinator at Hilltop Children's Center, and I know many of you here this evening. I'm also very excited that we have some new faces, new folks joining us in the crowd tonight. If you're calling from Seattle, you know it is a very windy and wild evening out there. And we also realize it is a late point in the day for many of you. So it means a lot to us that you choose to spend your windy, dark evening with us in this learning community. I am so excited to welcome back Julietta Skoog for part 2 of her Positive Discipline series and to talk about celebrating neurodiversity tonight. Before I pass things off to Julietta, just a few basic housekeeping things that will be familiar to many of you. If you are able, we love when participants keep their video screens turned on. That just gives us a way to see each other, to feel connected and be in community. We also totally understand if that's just not feasible or possible for you this evening. For the time being, please keep your mute turned on. That just allows Julietta to present without too much audio interruption or distractions. There will be opportunities for you to come off of mute. And please utilize that chat feature to share your questions. We'll be monitoring that. And just any insights or thoughts or supportive comments as the evening progresses. And I will put the sign in the chat once again for folks who have just joined us. And don't worry if you don't get a chance just yet, I will post that again once more before the end of the evening. So Julietta Skoog, welcome back to our series. For those of you who don't know Julietta, she is a certified positive discipline trainer with a degree in school psychology and school counseling. She brings over 20 years of experience coaching families in the Seattle Public Schools and homes all over the world. And she is the early years lead and co-founder of Sproutable, which you'll learn more about tonight. Julietta draws from her real life practical experience working with thousands of students with a variety of needs and her own 3 children when coaching parents. So Julietta, thank you so much for being here. I also want to give a warm welcome to Lori and Karen, who are fantastic ASL interpreters providing services tonight from the Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center of Seattle. And I am seeing in the chat, some folks are having trouble with getting their STARS ID. Merit website is down. Is perfectly okay if you would like to email me your STARS ID instead. And you can email me that at institute@hilltopcc.org. And last practice here before we pass things off to Julietta is to take a moment for a land acknowledgement, as is our practice at all of our Outreach Institute events. And I invite you to just take a moment and come into presence, whether you're sitting or standing or commuting. And take a breath and acknowledge the truth that each of us is standing on unceded Indigenous lands. Here in Washington State, we are on the land of the Coast Salish people. In the city of Seattle, we occupy the traditional land of the Duwamish in the city named for their chief, who was the first signer of the unfulfilled Treaty of Point Elliott. We also occupy the lands of the Suquamish, the Muckleshoot, and the Snoqualmie tribes of King County, as well as the lands that touch the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Puyallup and the Tulalip nations. And we honor with gratitude the land itself and these tribes. And as you listen to Julietta's presentation tonight, I encourage you to consider the connection between honoring each child's unique identity and the lifelong journey of decolonizing our ways of being with young children. When we choose to see children's neurodiversity as a strength rather than a deficit, that is one small step towards dismantling oppressive practices and systems in early educational spaces. And to support you to take further action towards Indigenous restorative justice on a societal level, I'm posting a few links in the chat, and I encourage you to share any links that you know of and would like to share with this community as well. And as I post those links in the chat, I thank you for pausing for that land acknowledgement. And I welcome Julietta into the space. Thank you, Julietta.
Thank you, Becky. I'm so happy to be back. I so appreciate the Hilltop community, and I'm really honored to be here on this evening. I know that it's at the end of a long day, so it feels really nice to be spending it with you all. I'm going to begin this evening with a story, and this was shared in an email that was sent to me by a caregiver. So I'll just share this story. In the past, I had taken care of a good friend of mine's child, and some of his tantrums would get so heated or out of control, it would almost become a screaming match between me and the child because our frustration levels were through the roof. Eventually, at one of his pediatric appointments, he was being screened for autism spectrum disorder. It turned out he was diagnosed with autism, and we just weren't aware of it until his diagnosis. It gave me a clearer picture because I was able to understand why certain things, toys being out of order, loud noises, poor social engagement with his older sister, etc., would set him off. And I could better approach the situation with a more understanding and open mind as to how to help him navigate his emotions and how to create a safe space for his meltdowns. So this is my hope for this evening, is to bring awareness of our own way that we see children's behaviors and offer that different perspective, whether we know there is a diagnosis or not, just being able to shift our lens. And also that opportunity that when children understand each other, they also have a more understanding and open mind. And that being said, acknowledging my own able-bodied, white body, cisgendered, that I am also showing up with my own biases and blind spots. And therefore, the way that I can show up is really as an ally and as an advocate. And this really is rooted in the over 15 years that I spent directly in Seattle Public Schools as a school psychologist, assessing, evaluating, working one-on-one, building such connected, deep relationships with my students who were in all ends of the spectrum, all different ranges that I'll speak about tonight. And I feel such a deep just love and passion for those children, like the real kids, who are living it. And for all of you who are teachers tonight and, really in the trenches, like on the front lines with these kids, they need us, they need allies and advocates and the grownups who are going to give voice to their strengths and their dignity and all that they deserve. So yeah, so that's my hope. So for just a future where all children are accepted and all children are celebrated. So I'll share my screen in just a moment. And one thing that I like to do when we do screen stuff and Zoom things, and I don't know about you, but I have also been presenting on Zoom all day. It was one of those days. So this is just a way for us to all stay engaged and absorb and not nod off. So I like to do a little exercise called a folded paper preview. And so I'm just going to ask if you, I know many of you are settled in. It's okay if you are, but if you can find a piece of paper, a scratch piece of paper, paper that you were going to be taking notes on anyways. And as you're gathering it, the first direction that I'll have you do is to fold it into thirds and then fold it in half and then fold it in half again. And I'll give those directions again as you're gathering it, so no problem. But what this is for is throughout the evening, if there's something that I say or a question that somebody else asks that sparks an aha or a tool or something that just, or a book that I'm going to recommend, you want to write it on each one of these squares. Okay. So in the end, you might have 12 takeaways or you might have 24 takeaways, two different sets. So one more time, I'll give those directions. You'll fold it in third and then in half and then in half again. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Lori. Hi, Karen. So, okay. So in this way, you'll be able to take some notes and just a little behind the scenes. When I give directions and then we're doing this kind of physical activity, that's also priming your brain. That's connecting your right brain and your left brain, waking that up so that you can absorb and learn and integrate some of the information this evening. So I'll share my screen and I'll pop into a little slide that talks about that folded paper preview. But this way you were able to see me do it as well. So here we are. I'm Julietta. And as Becky mentioned, I am the co-founder of Sproutable. And that is the company that I created with my other founder, Alana, who's amazing. And then we now have a third founder, Casey. And this grew from all of my years teaching positive discipline classes and workshops while I was still working in the schools, just hustling around with my flip chart and sharing information to teachers and to parents. And then finally kind of feeling like there was only one of me. And Alana said, how do we get it to more people? And so that's what Sproutable became, this online platform where we are able to share this information through videos, through weekly content. So we have a wonderful newsletter. We have one that's just for teachers, one that's just for parents of young children. We also have one for parents of elementary and teens and tweens. So please definitely share Sproutable with other people that care and love for children, because we have a lot of other wonderful offerings too. So as I mentioned, we're going to take some notes as we go along on that folded paper, just any ahas or tools that resonate for you this evening. And I want to just say, you know, however you showed up tonight is exactly how you're meant to be. And just by the act of, you know, opening yourself up to receiving, you'll get what you are meant to get, you know, just a few nuggets. And I'll be offering things like a buffet, but it is not required to take it all, eat it all. And so just take what resonates for you and feel free to leave the rest. So tonight we'll be celebrating neurodiversity. And in order to do that, let's begin by just taking a look at behavior. So I like to do a thing called an anonymous chatterfall. And so what you'll do is you will, if it's accessible for you, sometimes on Zoom, it's not so much. But if you want to change your name, the top 3 dots, and actually, I feel like for tonight, we don't need to keep it so anonymous. So let's just keep that extra step out of the way. But what I'll have you do is we're going to type into the chat, but not hit enter. Okay, so we're going to type into the chat, but not hit enter. The challenges that are some behavioral challenges that you see in the children that you either work with or that you have. So what are the behavior challenges that you see? And this might be for any child, truly any child. So what are those challenges? So take a moment, open up your chat, type in what those behaviors are that are so challenging. And I'm going to stop my share. Just think about, and these might be developmentally typical. They're challenging nonetheless. What are some of those behaviors? Okay. Okay, shall we do it? So this is what we call a chatterfall. It's just sort of like a waterfall, like a little rush of behavior of words. So we'll all hit enter on 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Hit enter. Okay, let's take a look. Woo. Okay, so punching, biting, scratching, running away, covering their face when communicating with them so we can't understand them, spitting, impulsivity, tuning out, fidgety, volume control, transitions, listening or not listening, aggressive with cats, biting, hitting, oppositional behavior, wanting to do the opposite of what's expected, screaming at inappropriate times, no sense of danger, repetition, doesn't show a range of emotions, misses social cues a lot, etc. We have some more around tantrums, hitting, spitting, vocal stimming, quick to anger, emotional regulation, hypersensitivity, running away, screaming, more arguing, tantrums, taking off clothes in inappropriate moments, completely ignoring teacher messages. Okay, yeah. So a lot. What did you notice? What did you notice about that list? What comes up for you all? What do you notice? And go ahead and pop it in the chat, or feel free to just take yourselves off mute at this point and offer. What do you notice? Yeah. So there's some empathy there. There's some like, wow, they're going through a lot. There's a lot of physical and sensory stuff going on. There's a lot of topics around sensory issues. Yes, there's something that's like missing. I can't quite read that one part, but it's saying, yeah, or personal versus shared time. Yeah, they're learning. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lot of there's challenges, big emotions, the physicality piece, and you see the patterns. So each one of you were writing things that were at least in, 3 to 4 other parents or caregivers in their list as well. And this is in the same list that I see whenever I do this with groups of parents and caregivers too. So just starting to realize, there's a lot of challenges going on with all kids. And they're going through a lot. This is hard for them. If we're starting to already get into their shoes, that's really overwhelming. Their sensory pieces, the physical pieces, feeling so overwhelmed. And then also looking at it from a grown up standpoint, that's intense. It's intense to be dealing with such physical behaviors, big screaming, the intensity of the violence, the yelling, the arguing, it just gets everyone really tense and really overwhelming. So just taking a deep breath with that piece, acknowledging that all young children have these kinds of challenges and behaviors. It's not that we're doing something wrong necessarily. This is on all of the list, as we're going to talk about tonight. Their brains are still developing, they're still learning social skills and still trying to figure it out. So, a lot of challenges here. And they really offer us an opportunity to start to lean into the life skills. And this is what positive discipline offers for us, are these life skills. So just taking a moment now, staying in our chatterfall and shifting gears toward the life skills that you think or that you know that children are going to need when they are 25 and beyond, for them to be their true self, for them to be contributing, for them to be happy, for them to fulfill their true potential? What are the life skills that they're going to need? And some of you might remember that we did this in part 1, but just to really anchor us, like, what are these life skills that they're going to need? So take a moment, just as you did, that was right on. Go ahead and type in a few of those life skills, and then we'll all hit enter together. Nice. And then let's go ahead and hit enter all together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Just reading this, go ahead and take a moment. It feels like a nice shower, doesn't it? After all those other challenging behaviors. So this is where we begin to shift our gears now, start to look ahead. Why are we doing this? Why are we really looking at these behaviors in this way? Because it's this chance to teach these life skills. So here are the things that are important to you, being able to connect in a physical manner, the hugging, handshaking, sharing and taking turns, making requests, communication, emotionally stable, understand social norms, confidence, compassion, happy, passionate, have positive social interactions, that they can pay attention, focus, not interrupt, clean up after themselves, take care of their personal needs. Yeah. Be regulated, adaptable, and have that tenacity to persevere those hard life lessons, continue to pursue their dreams and goals, the social skills, emotional regulation. Yes, delayed gratification, empathy, sympathy, respect, environmental awareness, communication skills. So a lot of executive functioning there. To feel understood, regulated, have empathy, kindness, problem solving, ability to communicate their needs and emotions, knowledge of self, understanding of others, the regulating when angry and upset, that nonviolent communication, coping skills, knowing their personal responsibilities, compassion, well-being. Yeah, it's a lot. So here we are in the land of hitting and biting and dysregulation and being overstimulated. And then we have this beautiful list of life skills that you all put in there, that regulated, whole self, compassionate in relationship with others, resilient, highly executively functioning. So what do you notice about that? What do you notice about that? What comes up for you around that second list? And anything that you noticed while making it together, too. What comes up for you? Yeah, it takes time and practice. Yes. So this is what we're in for. This is really what positive discipline is about, is really saying, I opened up the wrong screen, sorry. Yes, you all are helping me. Thank you. You're saying this is the starting point, that's the end goal, and it's this long road, right? So we are in it for the long haul. This is what it's about. It's really taking this moment, like this opportunity, with these challenges to actually grow these skills that are going to take a while, that are going to take time and practice, and that it's going to be a long road with. So yeah, we're all still practicing as adults too, right? And so children actually get to give us this gift to say, wait a minute, this is what we're hoping for our kids. how amazing. What a gift that these are things that actually I'm still working on. And so when I get to show up and model and teach and practice alongside with them, we get to grow too. So we're not showing up perfectly either, that we are in this together and we're there to advocate for them. You're all saying these beautiful things. It's a connection, especially in our world, that there's light at this tunnel and that it's okay that some of them may not be, achievable based on how they experience the world, but there's this chance to just get into it all, right? Just to practice, be aware of it. So this is the lens that now we're going to kind of jump into with, that we are celebrating neurodiversity because it's this chance to teach all of those life skills for all of the kids, whether whether they are neurodiverse or not, whether they just get to be um, in relationship with kids who are. So this is again kind of where we begin here. So make sure I'm on the right one. Yeah. Okay. So the challenges and the life skills. And so thinking about like what they need from us in order to grow those life skills, the same things, right? They need from us those same list, the compassion, the curiosity, the physical affection, the problem solving, the social skills, those kinds of things as well. So I want to just kind of hold that idea that the challenges are opportunities to teach those life skills. Okay. Because then we get to start to embrace it. We get to embrace all of the messiness that our young children bring in behaviors, and we get to really look at them from a new perspective. So, what is neurodiversity? Okay. So, with that way, it really is a different way of thinking, right? It's a different way that the brain is wired, and the brain is just incredible and fascinating. And so it's a different way of behaving or responding to others and the world. It's not bad, it's not good, right? It is just a totally different way. And all of us, every single one of us are so unique and different, right? We are all diverse in that way. So the way that we talk about it, in terms of looking at it from, and even I'm like pausing for a moment because I'm like, how it's interesting that we say neurodiverse as if it's these separate groups when really we're all diverse. So for me what it looks like is some different specific types of diagnosis, but really what I want you to remember is that it's these real spectrums and there's so much overlap. So when we think about some of the diversity, part of that are the kids that have social communication differences and social skills differences. And so that might come across as parallel play once they've gotten out of even a typically developing parallel play. There's going to be difficulties with nuance, difficulties with social cues. There is some real unfilteredness. I had just some of my favorite students of all times would just say the most amazing things because they were so honest and so unfiltered. So not being able to read the cues. There's also, when we look at specifically within the autism spectrum disorder, the restricted, the repetitive, and the stereotyped behaviors. And so these might be some of the things that you see, like the rigidity. Some of you mentioned this in some of the challenges, the rigidity or the really fixed interests. I've had students who were obsessed with peregrine falcons or obsessed with only red things or obsessed with trains to like the nth degree. I had a student who was obsessed with Survivor. Do you remember this show Survivor when it first came out? And fortunately, I was too. This was like 100 years ago. And so we could designate our one lunch once a week that he could just talk all things Survivor. And then we got to work on the skills outside of it that he could broaden his other, contributions to communication. So just having a real fixed interest. There's also, real difficulty with transitions, extreme distress, and some of the perseverative interests that aren't as healthy sometimes for kids. So things that can be harmful to their bodies or to others, or can again just limit those other social relationships. You also see some kids that walk on tiptoes or have some of the stimulation or self-regulation like hand flapping or twirling. So there's a whole variety within that particular band. Um, and then there's this huge other piece around the sensory development. And many of you mentioned that in the challenges. And this is part of what I felt like so passionate about working in schools, is that felt like we're not talking enough about the sensory challenges with not only typically developing kids, but especially for kids who are neurodiverse. So those types of sensory, just really like deeply feeling kids. So it's anything from noises to touch to what we call a vestibular system. So just where within their whole nervous system, it is just in a state of unrest, trying to find some balance. And it is from anything, any sort of sensory information that's really overwhelming for them. It can be tastes, it can be smells, it can be, just even proximity to other kids also. Um, it can be movement. So just really hypersensitive in that way. So those are those three buckets. But if you think about it, there's a spectrum within each of those as well. So there can be kids with autism that might be totally highly functioning on this social communication and social skills, but be really hindered by the sensory piece or by the behavioral piece. But you can also see how there's such an overlap that, when there are those kinds of behaviors or sensory issues, it's going to affect the social piece as well. So then we think about some other, neurodiverse kiddos that have, for example, ADHD. There's some of the attention deficit piece. And with that part, that it's really tapping into we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but that prefrontal cortex, that executive functioning. And so it leads to this impulsivity, this real hyper focus on things. So it's actually not so inattentive, it's that they're so hyper focused on certain things. So like that's what makes them so distractible, is that they are so hyper focused on a sound or somebody else or what somebody's doing, or it's really hard to make that transition because they get so hyper focused into what it is that they are enjoying in that moment. And then when we, look at other aspects as well, there's anxiety for kids when there's, especially with the sensitivity of and some of the stresses that this creates for them. And so there's what we call that comorbidity, where kids who have autism might also have, some of the diagnosis that will lean into the ADHD as well. Or for some kids that have the sensory piece, they're going to have some of those focus issues as well, because there's so much happening in that prefrontal cortex. So there's just a lot of overlap. The majority of our kids under the age of 9 generally land in the broader category of just developmental delays. And in fact, when we evaluate them through Seattle Public Schools, for example, the eligibility category goes away at 9, because it is just, it really is part of just such a developmental piece. And there's such an early intervention success where when you can have occupational therapy and speech therapy and really awesome behavioral support, they catch up. So, but you can see where there's really this overlap here between sometimes just a developmental delay, sometimes these early diagnoses, and especially for autism, you do really want to look at those first 3 years of development and diagnose it early. And so often we know by then. But there's just this whole overlap. So there's all these different types, and as I mentioned, it really is the spectrum. So all of these places like transitions and circle time, or playing with toys or playing with others, or the challenges with greetings or goodbyes or separation, or the sensory overload, or travel or stores or public places. Each kid is going to look really different, right? Their profile, if you look at each one of those things, some of them are going to be fine for some kids and some are going to be hard for other kids. And so we say, if you've met one child with autism, you've met one. They are these special snowflakes. They're all super unique. And I want you to think about that challenges list that we created and look at this list. And isn't that a challenge for all kids, right? All kids are having trickiness with transitions and trickiness playing with each other and saying goodbyes and getting overloaded with a sensory, piece too, myself included. I had to lay down with my weighted blanket just for a quick reset for 10 minutes today because it was just a long day on Zoom. So just starting to draw out, when we think about these quote unquote issues that kids who are neurodiverse have, it's like we're all there too. So the things that help support kids with neurodiversity help all kids, right? These are things that help all kids. So we're going to do a little activity and called Boxes of Burdens, and to play with this sort of development in all kids. And I want to highlight the work of Erik Erikson. And he was a developmental psychologist who created a psychosocial theory of development. And this theory sees children developing through a series of stages, largely through accomplishing tasks. So for the stage that we're talking about today, with these ages 2 to 5, the stage is around initiative versus guilt. So it really is about competence and capability. And this is really about this I can do it stage. It's also considered first adolescence, which I'm sure we can all relate to. It's a little bit tough. And they show creativity and they show courage, and they want to try those new tasks out. They want to, really follow those instincts to test it out. So, I would love to have one volunteer to be, let me see where this takes us. Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to kind of bring
And
it.
Julietta, there was a comment in the chat about going back to that slide and pausing for a moment to be able to read the slide and then look at the interpreter. Thank you.
Great. I will do that right now by hitting which cursor, not that one. Okay. Here we go. Yeah, no problem. This one? Yes, great. Okay. So if any of you would be willing, I'm going to actually ask for, just to keep us awake, I'm going to ask for 8 volunteers. And I'm going to be all I'm asking from the volunteer is to read one line in the chat. So I'm going to give you a number and you'll read the number that you are. So think about if you would be willing to just get off mute and read that one-liner. And then in the meantime, will be asking for one volunteer to be the child who's just going to experience what I'm sharing and what you're hearing from the parents and caregivers. So are we okay to stop share for a moment? I'm going to take us off. Okay, I can come back to. So I'm going to stop share. And then, okay. So I'm going to view, I hope I can do this. I'm going to view gallery. Yeah, awesome. Okay, now I can see you all. And I see a few people off of their video. Hi. Okay, now I feel like I can really see you. So would anybody be willing to be the child and experience, really get something out of tonight's presentation? Goodness. So brave. Okay, Brandon and Angela. Yes. Thank you so much. Did you feel me melting down into the screen? Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. So you get to just hang and just experience what we're experiencing here. Now I'm going to need 8 more volunteers. So this is going to be tricky because I could barely get one for the child. So I am going to just ask us who are alert. Is it okay if I call on you and you'll be willing to read? Okay, awesome. Okay, I'm going to give you your numbers. All right. Becky, you're number 1. And is it Leanne? Leanne, you're number 2. Thank you so much. Steph, number 3. Are you willing? Are you in? Number 3. Got it. Awesome. Okay, remember your number. Misty, are you cool to help me? 4. Thank you, Misty.
Carmen is also offering.
Carmen, where are
Carmen.
you?
Carmen Moore.
Carmen, thank you so much. Carmen, you can be my number 5. Caitlin, will you be my number 6? Thank you so much. Valerie, will you be my number 7? Thank you. And Laura, will you be my number 8? Amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, so you've all got your numbers. You're going to remember your numbers. Okay, Brandon and Angela, I am going to invite you to make sure your view is speaker view so that you get to experience when we say something, that you'll be able to see it in full screen. Awesome. Okay. And I am going to begin. So, oh my gosh, everyone's on alert now. What is she doing? What is happening here? Okay. So Brandon and Angela, stay out of the chat. Okay. That's sort of a surprise. That's like behind, otherwise you're going to see the script and we're behind the stage now. Okay.
Yeah, we turned it off. It's off.
Okay. Wonderful. My parents and caregivers, I am going to now, copy into the chat, copy and paste into the chat. That's what I'm doing. Your lines, okay? So that you can start practicing them. Okay. That's your lines to start practicing them. Okay. All right. So now, let me see what else I need to do. Okay. So we're now going to play with this. Okay. We're going to play with this sense of initiative. We're going to play with this time and period of development with Angela and Brandon. And so I feel like I should call you like Brangela or have a little celebrity name for you too. Can you be Brangela? Okay.
We love it. We love it.
Okay, wonderful. Okay. So Brangela, you are going to be holding each of these boxes that I put into this screen. I want you to hold out your hands and act like you are accepting these boxes and holding these boxes, okay, of burdens. All right. Okay, here's step 1. So I'll begin with this. Okay. It is really loud. I feel overwhelmed. I have nightmares every night. I just started preschool and there are 20 kids in my class. I'm trying to explain myself, but I don't have the vocabulary. I am playing happily, and now I have to stop. I'm hungry every 2 hours.
Me too.
There's a new baby in our home. My legs are tired. and my shoes are uncomfortable. Leaving my parents is scary. I didn't want my sandwich cut in half. Okay. So now, Brangela, you're holding all of these boxes. Okay. You're holding all of these boxes. And now my caregiver is 1 through 8. You ready for your lines? We'll start with number 1 and then go on to number 2. Go for it.
Stop whining.
You are going to spill.
Steph, that might have been you. It's in the chat. Number 3.
Hurry up, we are so late.
It's too much. I don't think you're ready.
Careful, don't go so fast or too slow, or hold them that way.
Great. Now you woke up the baby.
I am so tired of always having to carry your things.
What is wrong with you?
Okay, end scene. So, Brangela, you're holding all of these. How are you feeling? What's coming up for you?
Just kind of sad.
Mhm.
And I feel, my heart hurts. I feel it's heavy, you know. I remember experiencing some of those growing up too, and it's feeling coming back. And I do feel overwhelmed and scared and sad and trying to hold all those emotions in.
So you're already holding all these boxes. And then the way that the parents or the caregivers, certain offerings are making it just as hard, making it even harder when you already have these burdens, right? So participants, my number 1 through 8, how did that feel for you? What did you notice?
I feel bad that I have said I'm so tired of always having to carry your things. And I'm reflecting on that right now.
It's an experience. We just experience when we can really see it through this lens. And let me tell you, Valerie, I've said it too, right? Anytime you worked with so many kids, we say these things. And so here's where we get to do round 2. We just get an offering just to experience it so that we can be open to something new. Okay, so let's try round 2. And you're the same numbers. My number is 1 through 8. Okay. Steph said, I hated hearing these growing up, and seeing them again made me realize I say them too. Yes. And I just want to acknowledge this. We all say this. It does not mean that we are bad people. It means that we are humans, right? And that we make mistakes. And that we also, when we recognize that, when we have an awareness, we come into consciousness. We actually get to be consciously in relationship with these young children. And whenever I say it, because I still do, then we get to make those repairs as well. We say, actually, let me say this in a different way. We get to read another chance. Yeah.
Sorry, Julia. It's Darlene. I also think that it's important for us as the adults to remember that we're holding our own boxes. And so sometimes our reaction is our own stuff coming out. And like Steph mentioned, like we've experienced these kind of reactions ourselves. And so it just naturally happens.
Yes, Darlene, you are 3 steps ahead of me, right? It is not just the burdens that they are holding, but it's also the ones that we are too. Yeah. Okay, but the next round is going to be more
100%.
Yes. Okay, so same numbers. Okay. Brangela, oh my gosh, I love this so much that you've renamed yourself. I'm so happy. I feel like there's going to be paparazzi outside wherever you are, so just to watch out. So Brangela, you're still carrying those same boxes, okay? And now let's go again with round 2. So you've got your new script in the chat, my 1 through 8s. Take yourselves off mute and Brangela, notice what you're feeling. Okay, go ahead.
Let's pretend we are elephants carrying really big tree branches.
How many candles do you want to blow out? Take a deep breath and slowly blow them out.
Steph, will you say it one more time louder?
You are so capable.
I see you. You are carrying so many boxes.
Oh, that looks really uncomfortable. Would you like a hug?
Okay, I am unmuted. Okay. I wonder what would happen if you put 3 of them down first and made 2 trips.
I will walk beside you and keep you company.
Say to yourself, I can do hard things.
Okay, and scene. Okay, Brangela, what's coming up for you?
So I feel proud. I feel like I'm happier, and I feel like I'm supported. People are supporting me, as well as not just supporting me, but through leading me, and really encouraging me in giving me different choices and different options and saying things I can do. I really felt some of those choices. You're seeing who I am and where I'm at, and you're not giving me advice or anything. You're just recognizing me as who I am and what I have to offer, and all my burdens that I have with me. So I think we all need that recognition sometimes. And also for me, I feel that it shows the dynamic with a teacher and a student, and how sometimes teachers can become like a parent, and you don't have to be a parent. They can be a friend instead, and someone you can rely on. And so those boundaries and those lines are kind of there, but you can make that connection and you can build that trust with each other, and that's very important. Yes, trust is very important, and it's a big thing too.
Thank you. Thank you. What else came up for the rest of the group? Anything else that you noticed? There was a couple of comments in the chat too, just about the tone was different. Anything else that you noticed?
For me, it's kind of like the previous list. This is the goal that we're trying to hit, and it felt good to practice.
Yeah. So this is where we get to just lean into, and it's a messy process. Kids are messy. They're so messy, right? And we are human beings. But really, when we start to change our lens, that's the first step, to think about, how do we lift the burden? How do we acknowledge the burdens? And then cultivate that developmental drive for initiative, So this talk tonight, however, is about celebrating neurodiversity. And so when we think about that extra layer of kids that do have profound sensory issues, profound social communication delays, restrictive stereotyped behaviors that are so stressful for them, those extra burdens on top of that, just by showing up to a classroom, just by getting into bed or putting pajamas on, adding those extra burdens from a sensory perspective, from a stress perspective. And I know for a lot of the students that I would work with too, they wanted so deeply to have friendships. I think there's this misnomer that kids that are on the spectrum or have certain neurodiverse tendencies, that they actually don't want to make friends, that they don't want to be in relationship with others. And they deeply, deeply wanted that. They felt so overwhelmed by the big tantrums and the big emotions, and they really were living in this fight or flight response. So when we add those extra boxes on, thinking about these empowering responses are going to be helpful for all kids. And this is where I get so on a really big soapbox, because people will say, well, yes, but does positive discipline work with kids who are neurodiverse, or for kids who, you know, are on the spectrum or have really extreme regulation issues? And I'm like, how are those responses not good for all human beings, right? We could feel that. We could feel that difference. So just an offering that, you know, as we look at these different tools, how they are for all kids, for all kids. And just as the burden are already so hard for kids ages 2 to 5, kids who have neurodiversity, they have so many extra boxes. And then Darlene, I so appreciated you saying then, you know, offering that compassion within ourselves and the boxes that we bring as well. So is there any other, this is kind of what I want to like lean into developmentally, is the sense that, actually I'll save it for my other slides. I think we're getting close to a little bio break. So just to wrap up this activity before we take a bio break, any other comments or questions about that that sense of initiative? I just want to kind of end that, you know, for me, self-esteem and confidence and a lot of those things on your list come from having skills, and skills comes from having practice. And so for kids that have special needs or are neurodiverse, it just means that we slice it thinner and we still meet them where they're at to still build their skills. So I'll talk more about this on the other side of our break, but you know, really thinking about that in terms of skill set, not necessarily enabling, but really walking beside and helping to meet them where they at to build whatever next skill that is. So any last comments or questions about the boxes of burden Zoom version?
There was a comment in the chat. I don't know if you saw it. It said, sorry, I got to go back.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What if you're the one working hard on giving these positive comments like everyone else, but the other co-teacher is giving so many negative ones?
You know what I would say, honestly, the modeling and the presence with kids, when you are who you are, I'm like pulling my chair back just to like climb into the screen, because truly when you are modeling and you are authentic in yourself and you are offering the 5 candles to take a deep breath, when you are staying super, you know, regulated, when you are saying, I'm going to walk beside you here, you can do hard things, I trust you, like we're going to go take this break, we're going to take our deep breaths, we're going to have a safe body before we can rejoin, in a way that's really like connected and confident, kids are going to resonate with that. They are going to like warm to you. I keep thinking about this phrase, like cream rises to the top, you know, that it is just stay true to yourself and really through that modeling piece. And I think for that co-teacher too, it's that compassion for the co-teacher, whatever boxes they're holding on to, that you also get to really, you know, model that just positive, that energy. And I don't mean like being happy and positive in this toxic positivity, you know, really it's about being that deeply connected and present source within the classroom. Land. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So Becky, should we take just a really quick bio break?
Yeah,
Okay.
let's just give folks a few minutes. We'll reconvene 8:35.
Yeah.
Does that sound?
Yes. Yes. Now, of course, I want to stay all night. I've got a lot to let's talk about. Okay, I'll be right back.
And I'm putting the sign-in sheet in the chat once more in case you need it.
I already filled up my 12 boxes. I'll do 12 more.
I was going to say, flip that sheet over, Valerie.
Well, that's got other stuff, but I'll grab another 12 boxes.
One. So I'm going to just jump back into my slideshow here. And there was our boxes of burdens, fun activity. Make sure, are you seeing it all as a full screen? Okay. And okay. So I want to talk a little bit about myths of kids with neurodiversity. And one of the myths is that they're just making bad choices. And as we get to talk about the brain a little bit, I just want to, when we are able to make choices, it is when we are in an integrated, safe, cognitively stable, regulated state. So shifting that landscape of they're in a, what part of the brain are we able to actually make choices? When they're living so dysregulated, they're not even in that part of the brain that's able to make choices. So just thinking about the languaging around that. I think another myth is that for children who are neurotypical, that if we just avoid, if we distract, if we don't talk about it, some of these really big behaviors, they're just so out of my control, then they'll just go away. And really the opposite is true, that when we can understand what's happening, when we can get in the game, when we can actually use the challenges to teach, discipline means to teach, when we can be very honest and open with all kids of about these different things, then that's when shame gets to dissipate. That's how shame gets dissolved, that we get to embrace and celebrate all behaviors, that we're all learning and practicing and growing and working towards different things. So a really important framework around this is to look at it from a brain standpoint. And I start teaching the brain in the palm of the hand to kids when they start at the age of 2. And this is a model that Dan Siegel uses. He's the psychiatrist down at UCLA. And I'll share it with you now. Most of you know this, but just as a quick review, can you all see me okay? Am I pinned okay? So if you open up your hand and you tuck in your thumb and then you fold your fingers over, this becomes an integrated brain. And these fingers represent the prefrontal cortex. And then if you open your hand back up, this becomes our fight or flight response. And this is an autonomic part of our brain. We are there when we have the sensory information that our brain is not safe. And we get there because our limbic region of the brain, which is our emotional epicenter, there's a little amygdala shaped like an almond, and it is a radar, okay? So if we think about kids on the spectrum or kids who are just really deeply with the sensory, along the spectrum of sensory disorders, their amygdala is on overdrive. It is constantly reacting to go into this fight or flight state where they are dysregulated. Also remembering that 2 to 5-year-olds also are just still growing their brain. And so their little amygdala is also, radar is going off constantly and getting them into this fight or flight response because their brains grow from the bottom up like a house. So their fight or flight response is awesome so they can survive and thrive. And then they're growing that emotional epicenter. And then finally, by the time they're about 25, that prefrontal cortex is a little bit more integrated. So what Dr. Siegel says is that when we name it, to frame it, so that's why it's really important to name feelings, to name the emotions, to have very strong and rich vocabulary. So again, this is for kids that have sensory issues and also kids on the spectrum and also kids with ADHD and also all kids. So great to have a rich and strong vocabulary and how it helps to really validate and honor those emotions, not just because feelings are kumbaya, but because it actually helps the brain feel safe. And when we feel safe, then we're able to integrate back into that prefrontal cortex. So I'm going to show you a poster here. Hopefully this will, oh, actually it's not a new share. Hold on. Maybe I just do this. I think if I do this, that's going to be too tricky for me. Sorry. Oh, I did it. Look at that. Okay. So can you all see this poster now? Okay, so Dr. Siegel uses the acronym FACES. And so when we are here in that prefrontal cortex, we are flexible, adaptive, coherent, energized, and stable. And we are able to access these kinds of executive functioning skills. Okay. So when we think about kiddos who are on the spectrum or with other neurodiversity, this is the part that really gets affected. Okay. So it's both that sensory piece, and there's also all these other systems, the messages that are happening up and down the spinal cord, and affecting their ability to really grow these executive functioning skills. So you can see this. These are what they really are challenges with. Also, again, just typical 2 to 5-year-olds also. So thinking about this from a brain perspective, we can share with our students, with our own children, that this is what we're growing. We're all growing our brains. We're all growing. We're all practicing to have a super strong brain, right? So when we are triggered, when we have certain information that's getting our little security guard, I call it, security guard is saying, oh no, you're not safe. Boom. That sends our wise leader, that wise self that's in all of us. And kids I love to use the kind of superhero thing because I think we're all superheroes, right? It's not just for pretend. We are. Our best self is here. But when we are said we're unsafe, right? If that radar is saying you're not safe, boom. So just thinking about our kids who are, with a neurodiversity, again, those kids that are always just flying off the handle and so stressed. It's like just constant lid flipping. Okay. So when we teach all kids this, starting at 2, we're able to look at each other, not as bad kids, weird kids, making bad choices, what's wrong with them. It's just like, oh, their lid is flipped. Oh, they must be stressed. Oh, their security guard is going off. Their alarm is going off. Mine isn't. Isn't that so interesting? We're all so different. Isn't that interesting that these sorts of things stress out this friend? It doesn't bother me, but that's really hard for them. That's where we start to open up that door toward the seeds of compassion for other people. And it's harder for some kids than it is for us. So in that way, we get to accept that challenge, right? This is where we really can start to like jump into this. How can we actually teach this, and say, actually, this is important. This is what goes back to those life skills. What's on that list is really big things. I'm looking back at your chat here. These beautiful, beautiful lists that you have. Let me see where they are here. Empathy, kindness, problem solving, compassion, ability to communicate needs and emotions, knowledge of self, understanding of others. Laura just nailed it with those, right? So if those are the things, this is where we get to start teaching that by saying, wow, look at how all of our brains are growing in different ways, and how when someone is having a really hard time, it's because their brain is really flipping. They're still practicing, they're still growing those skills. My kids say that a lot. They'll come home and they'll say, oh, that kid, oh yeah, he's still practicing. So in order to do this, we've got to make things routine, and we've got to really let go of our own ego and know that when there's behaviors and messiness happening, it's not about us, it's about really us getting in and caring for the kids. It's about the kids. So when we follow through, we practice this in part 1 with connection and curiosity and giving control. That starts to really open up this empowering place. And I want to jump us into more of the strategies now too for how to do this. So, and then we really want to start to slice it thinner. So when I say slice it thinner, that goes back to those skills that I was saying, that no matter where our kids are at, or they're our students or our own children, we're meeting them. Okay. And so, so there's lots of ways that we can start to teach this to kids. And one of the ways that I love to do this is through books. Okay. So I love this book. If you don't have this one yet, this is a great one. It's called Just Ask. And I'm going to pause on this for a moment here. There's a lot of things on that slide and our strategies. So can you see me big? Because I'm pinned. Is that right? Okay. So this is called Just Ask. And I love this book because it goes through, first of all, it's written by the Justice Sonia Sotomayor. And each page talks about different types of kids and learners. And so this one is a child that has diabetes and talks about taking insulin. This child talks about that some of them are shy and quiet, some of them are chatty. This child has asthma and has difficulty breathing and uses an inhaler. This one has a wheelchair. This one is blind. This one is deaf. This one has dyslexia. This one has autism. And this one speaks with a stutter. This one has Tourette syndrome. And each of the pages that are so beautiful at the end has this really joining beautiful question like, do you ever feel frustrated? Do you ever wonder if people understand you? What do you like to talk about? Are you really good at something? So when we start to celebrate in this way, there's all different kinds of people. Isn't that awesome? There's all different kinds of learners. Isn't that awesome? And especially when you have already taught about the brain in the palm of the hand, then that commonality for kids they're able to say, oh yeah, I'm like that too, right? We see our commonalities and we celebrate the differences too. So I love this idea of like, and if you don't know, just ask. And I don't know about you all, but like we were raised in a time where it was like, oh, don't say anything, or oh, shh, don't, that's so mean, or don't like, shh, or you're embarrassing, or that's harmful or hurtful. And that just sends a message to all the kids that there's something wrong or bad or negative about that. And instead, when we can say, isn't that awesome, right? These are all of our superpowers that we have. What's your superpower? In fact, one of my favorite teachers, my dear friend, Julie Colando, their big banner in their classroom is, what's your superpower? Because we all have, right? If we think about neurodiversity, all of our brains are different. All of us are neurodiverse. So what is our superpower? You know, really like, and like saying like this is the way that I learn best, or these are the things that I love, or these are the things that make me special, or the things about my family that make me special too. So it's this idea of like, if you don't know, just ask, right? So teaching our young kids early to say like, that's so cool. Tell me more about that. I want to learn more about that. And so at the end, she talks about just these unique powers. And at the end, what will you do with your powers? So this is a beautiful way to start helping to teach and just getting in there with kids through books. The other part is about creating new stories. So for kids that have sensory issues and that are on the spectrum, social stories are really powerful. And when you can personalize them, either with your own child or as an ally, if there's a child within the classroom or a neighbor or a cousin, you know, creating stories for children about this helps them with that understanding. So for kids who have sensory issues or autism, we would create social stories around how they would go to school, you know, just actually like getting into school or being able to tolerate the first 10 minutes of a particular activity or any sort of challenge that they're struggling with, creating a really simple story with them as the character that shows a healthy resolution with those coping skills that they can try. And we'll tap into some of the mindfulness piece too. But the social stories are so powerful for kids. So also creating those to be an ally as well. So a bug and a wish is another really powerful tool that's helpful for all kids. And as I get into kind of these three pieces, and then I'll take myself off screen because I like to see your faces. So bug and a wish and stop means stop and the personal space is really powerful, because the reality is that when you do have a kiddo that has really extreme behaviors, they can be scary, you know? They do get into kids' faces and into their stuff. There are the students that are going around and ripping everything off of the walls, or flipping the tables, or throwing all of the blocks, or hitting or biting, or doing all of those things too. So really talking about regulation for all kids. And I think there can be a sense sometimes where we don't actually acknowledge what's just happened, and the rest of the kids are absorbing those big behaviors into their bodies and storing that. So really taking a sense for the whole classroom, or for if there's a whole group of kids, and I know we've got a mix of teachers and parents here too. So sometimes it's within a sibling too, if you have a sibling with autism or who's neurodiverse, or just who like really creates a lot of, big intensity, recognizing that sibling that's absorbing that. And again, it's like we think, oh, don't talk about it, or just avoid and distract, or just kind of move on, but just acknowledge it, right? Lid has flipped. We have a calm down space that I'll talk about too, a place to regulate, and then take that time to really move it through the bodies, take the deep breaths, and then offer some places where kids can start to have some assertiveness. And this is how we can do this through a bug and a wish, where they can say, it bugs me when you knock down all of my toys, all of my excuse me, tower that I was working on so hard. And I wish that you would give me some space, please. And so just starting to have a little bit of that assertiveness and power. And I have a video that shows this with my kids too, just the back and forth. But then being able to teach the kids that did the knocking down to say, I hear you saying it bugs you and you wish that I would have some space. Did I get that right? And you as the teacher or as the parent are slicing it thinner, you're giving them those phrases so that they also get that chance to make the repair and they feel better. And there's that collaborative piece that like, okay, great. What's a solution here? Staying solution focused. I'm going to work on my blocks over here on this mat. I'm still practicing that. So having that space for them to be able to take responsibility, make the repair, and for all kids to be able to share with each other, that sense of needing personal space. And then also that stop means stop, so that when they are starting to get dysregulated or in their space, to understand stop means stop, that precursor to consent, and not just like being freaked out by these kids' big behaviors, right? Just like empowering all the kids to say, stop, no, thank you. You get to play with that over here. I'm playing with these blocks right now, So it's really a community. Or if it's in the home too, in the same way, where we're all supporting each other. We're all growing these kinds of skills, through relationship with each other. Okay. And then role playing and practicing is huge, 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 huge. So lots of practice. Now remember, for kids to be able to role play and practice, they have to feel safe and they have to feel regulated. And so we're going to close with some of those strategies, but just thinking about opportunities that you have through puppets, through stuffed animals, through actual bodies too, of role playing as much as possible. And as I said before, really giving them the script. So often I hear parent grown-ups saying, use your words. And I'm like, they don't know what words to use. We have to tell them what words to use. So giving them the script for what to say. And then I want to touch briefly on this social thinking. So this is a program that's fantastic. Michelle Garcia winner. Some of you might be familiar with her. She is a speech and language pathologist who created the social thinking program to help kids with social communication. So reading social cues, recognizing rigidity, and she created all these little superheroes. And it turned out in the beginning, it was just for kids on the spectrum, especially the high functioning kids. And then everyone was like, guess what? This is good for all kids. So once again, like thinking about, well, if we've got one kiddo who really struggles with social cues and social communication, likelihood most of the kids will too. And so thinking about how you can incorporate that kind of teaching into either a classroom lesson, or as a parent, I have this as part of a daily practice that my kiddo calls it meditation, but really it's just that brain building time where we get to embed growing our brain, practicing some mindfulness, or also some of those social communication pieces where we're role playing and practicing with each other too. So it really takes practice. Kids are not going to learn this without practice. They have to practice. We talked about social stories already, and so I'll just end this slide with the sensory diet concept. And so OTs talk about this, occupational therapists. And so really thinking about how to incorporate within the routine of a day. Again, this is good for all kids, and especially kids that have sensory integration issues, that there's moments that are baked in where you can reset, calm the nervous system, and take some deep breaths, do some rhythm, some movement, have some call and response, or some singing, or some physical, just kinesthetic movement base that connects that right brain, left brain, that has maybe the lights down, or whatever is soothing for that particular, kiddo, rubbing on Velcro, getting the weighted vest on, having a sip of water through a straw. So just thinking about where you bake that in. I have found, especially for classrooms when you're first coming in from recess or from any outside activity, just having a mindful monitor job. And I'll show you some of these other things here too when we get into the mindfulness portion. So just thinking about that as a sensory diet, especially after school for kids, a swing or a hammock, or getting into some of that type of just movements. A lot of kids want to just have pressure on them. So, and again, snowflakes, every kid is different. So really getting to know what works for your kiddo, that's going to be really helpful for them to reset and just to bring things back down to baseline so that they're not just about to flip, that you really kind of tighten that lid a little bit more too. Okay. So again, with this, you really want to make it routine. You want to practice, you want to set those goals, give those responsibilities. All these books that I'm going to share with you as well. And I just love this quote by Jed Brewer that curiosity will conquer fear, and when we think about neurodiversity and we think about kids that are, have different behaviors and might act differently or look differently to other kids, then we don't want them to fear them. We want to have that really deep curiosity, and so we get to say, wow, tell me more, right? Just ask, how is that for you? What is going on? Getting into their eyes and seeing how we can all benefit by seeing the world through their eyes, and all benefit from a classroom that is rich in sensory supports, rich in feelings vocabulary, rich in strong, empathetic, and safe, regulated classrooms and homes. Everyone benefits from that. So making it routine. So now that we've had that baseline of our brain, you can see now how important, again, for all kids, but especially for kids who are neurodiverse, how important soothing, strengthening, and regulating the nervous system is. So here's what I want to say. I have to take myself off this for a second just to see you all, because I get a little emotional about this just because I was in schools for so long. How important it is when everyone around us can be regulated, right? When typically developing kids can have really strong nervous systems, can have strong regulation, when the grown-ups around can be strong, that is such powerful modeling and mirror neurons for all kids. So this isn't just for the kids who need it, right? Or who are really struggling. These tools are powerful for all kids. And when we think about the growing brains and that prefrontal cortex, these types of strategies really support that for all kids. Okay, I just had to see your faces when I said that. Okay, so with mindfulness then, how important this is to have baked into all of our daily lives. It's that simple practice of bringing awareness, acceptance into that moment to moment experience, that feeling of ease and calm acceptance, that non-reaction. Okay. So the breath piece is really important. Okay. And this is what I think is so fun. It was honestly my favorite lesson always to go teach in the classroom. So we can't just tell kids, take a deep breath. We actually need to practice it with them. So I love to create any kind of breath that the kids are into. So whether they're into that peregrine falcon or the whale or the unicorns or a mermaid, whatever it is, they get to do those kinds of breaths. Show me the mermaid breath. Show me the Thomas the Train breath. And then all these different books that I'll show you as well. So really find the fun with that, really personalize that kind of practice. I feel like preschool teachers are already like baked in so fun. For those of you parents that are on here that are just more tired, it's what I would say is think about what your kids are super into and then practice the breath in that way. As I mentioned, we have just this daily practice in between cleaning the room, picking up the room, and before we take a bath, that we just sit in our little feel better spot, my 6-year-old and I, but we've been doing this since she was 2, and her older 2 sisters, we did this as well when they were little. Now they have their own practice, their own mindfulness practice, but where we just have a little bit of fun with it. We might, one night we might take our stuffy and say, okay, we're going to just lay down and put the stuffy on our belly and take deep breaths. Or we might say, okay, I'm thinking of a number. What number am I thinking of? That's how many breaths we're going to take, and see who can do it for the longest, just to have some fun with it. But really making it routine, making it ritual, and just how really profound the effects of the breath are on the nervous system. So let me share with you a couple of my favorite ways for teaching kids this. One is the stuffy breath. I feel like this never gets old to just lay. I used to love to do this in classrooms. I would just lay down on the floor, put a stuffy on my belly, and take some deep breaths. This one, of course I did. This book is great. My friend Chris has written quite a few mindfulness books for kids called Breathing Makes It Better. And so, again, when you are just the firm, kind of confident authority where we read one of these every day, no matter what, it's not a choice. Do you want to breathe or not? It's like, no, we do this. We always do this at the same time. Maybe it's at breakfast. Maybe it's one of the 3 books before we go to bed is always a breath book. This one is awesome. Breathe Like a Bear, because every single page is a different. I talked to you about this at part 1 too, but it's now with this context, you see, hopefully it's like kind of baking into, like this one is hot chocolate, this one breath, this one is the bear breath. And so just doing one, right? It's like taking the vitamin. Okay. Oh, it's our breath time. All right, let's see which one we're on. And then put the bookmark. All right, now the next stage. Here's our next one. I like to do, I left that one downstairs. Like there's an alpha breaths book, and each letter we might pick out a name and do the J breath, and then the U breath and then the L breath, and then the I breath, like Julietta or Leona. And so each breath has a different kind of fun breath for kids. There's so many great books now these days. So I love that one. And I think those are all the ones that I brought about breathing. Okay. So, but incorporating it, practicing it, having fun. Okay. So you all get that. So the next piece is that habit. Okay. So we know that 40% of behavior is repeated daily. Routines are a string of habits that makes our brains more efficient, and we can conserve energy easier. And for kids too, routines are so powerful. So thinking about that habit stacking, how you can add one of these into an already existing routine. Part of mindfulness is really that cultivation. Okay. And so that practice of being happy and relaxed and curious and open and receptive really is, it's a practice, it's a focus. We actually have to kind of identify the pieces that really bring us joy and then which really don't, you know? And so, as the Dalai Lama says, having done this, we then gradually eliminate what leads to suffering, what cultivates our happiness. And so, what a gift we get to give to children when we can start to cultivate that for them as well, that sense of self, that sense of awareness. How do I feel right now? No judgment, right? That's the mindfulness, no judgment. Where am I at right now? What does bring me happiness? What does bring me not happiness? And I find it really interesting, you know, until they're about the age of 7, 8, I call it the magic 8, they can't really hold two feelings at the same time. So whereas we start to broaden, like this week in our family, our word for the week is bittersweet, like holding these two, this polarity of having some sweetness and also some not so great things at the same time. But for our younger kids, that's hard. They are very concrete in that way. So at this age, it's just about building that strong sense of all the feelings so that they can grow that capacity. So that being said, bringing back some of my books, I love the affirmations book, I Think I Am. And so this way also of just, again, right, it's all under that context of like, we're growing this super strong Jedi superhero brain. And so we do affirmations as a practice. This is one of our daily practices. Sometimes Leona is like, let's just do affirmations. I love that because then I get to think about the next day for my own work. This also are some of my favorite. I know I brought this last time too, but I just wanted to share them with you here. This one is What Feelings Do When No One Is Looking, which is a really beautiful, all kinds of feelings like bliss and anger and kindness and trust. So again, just thinking about like, how does this show up for me, right? If we think about this idea of cultivating optimism, cultivating happiness, then we get to experience a full range and being aware of that. So for our young children, it's just like, oh, how does bliss show up in my body? What does bliss even mean? You know, just like we were giving them a big range of vocabulary because we want them to be strong readers, these pre-readers. We're doing the same for that social emotional learning as well. I love the Susan Verde series also. These are great. I Am Peace, I Am Yoga. For some kids who are on the spectrum, I'm just thinking about the kid that was like screaming at me, I hate yoga. I don't want to do yoga. No yoga. Great, right? It's not for everyone. And so it's about finding the tools that work for them. Some of them just love to shake up the glitter jar and just watch it. That's really soothing for them. It really is about bringing awareness of what works, what helps my brain, what helps their brain, right? Where am I? Where is my state right now? And then practicing these things. Just we're in the state of practice in these early years, you know, so that then when they grow into the later elementary years and the middle school years, they are aware of actual healthy coping skills that work for them. And they are advocates for themselves and they are empowered about their own superpowers, their own unique ways of learning and what they need for them to be regulated and for them to be whole and authentic. So I was just going to share this with something I snagged from Leona downstairs. She just made her own little list of feeling words. Sometimes she just kind of makes that or her own little quadrant of different feelings as well. But you can also get them off the internet too, right? So you have like Generation Mindful does a great job of just having some baked in calming strategies and some nice feelings faces. But the visuals are really important for kids to have this. And again, if this is just part of the world that they swim in, then this is what they know, right? This is what they learn. It's not so foreign or weird or different. This is just what we do. We check in with ourselves. We have feelings. I love this one too. Just, I forgot this one was at the bottom, but Bodies Are Cool. This is my favorite one also. just in terms of just all different bodies and types and celebrating the beauty of that. And then let's see, a couple of last ones too. These are a little wheel of choice ones. So they're kind of like little menus that we practice. So Leona will pick one, or students in classes, like if you make them as a classroom, then when they go to that little feel better spot, they can try different things for regulation. We have some little mindfulness cards, this little handful of quiet. So the way that I do this is I really like organize, I have it all in a bin, you know, and then it's that commitment to that practice, to that routine, to that habit, that the same time every day, we're practicing one of these things. We're pulling out. So we're finding the fun, because kids learn through play and they learn through fun, but we're doing this together as co-regulation. So thinking about that as teachers too, you're having that sensory diet, that space that we're all doing this at the same time. We're all singing or doing that little yoga series, or we're reading one of those books, we're doing one of the breathing pieces. So kids expect it as well. Okay. Okay, let's see what else I want to say about mindfulness. I think that is kind of where we'll wrap it up here. You all know gratitude is so huge, and this piece, modeling for kids as well, is so powerful. And when we are celebrating neurodiversity or celebrating other kids that have neurodiversity, really turning that for kids into such a strength. How lucky are we that this friend is in our classroom? How lucky are we that we get to have a friend who has some sensory issues, so that we get to learn about that? How cool that we get to also experience some of these tools that are helpful for that friend, that's also going to be helpful for us too. So modeling the gratitude, having that as part of a ritual, class meetings where you give compliments of how grateful you are for each other and the pieces that each of us bring to the classroom are really powerful as well. And then, you know, finally, the stillness piece cannot be overemphasized, honestly. I mean, just really starting small with kids, and especially for those kiddos with ADHD or having a hard time focusing, when we're slicing it really small, starting with just a 5-minute, not even 5-minute, I'm talking like 2-minute meditation. Like a lot of these apps. Oh, in fact, you know what? I had a friend that just sent me this really awesome app. I'll send you the link. Sitting Still Like a Frog has a little really short ones for kids, or just a really simple meditation card that you're reading that's like 30 seconds for kids. Just practicing sitting in stillness, starting to become aware of their nervous system. They're not going to be perfect. They're going to be wiggling all over the place. And this is a piece that I'll just, you know, kind of close with for you all, is this idea of like, how do we do this? If we don't have our own practice, how do we teach it to kids? How do we start with ourselves? And one thing I'll say is that kids give us this gift of being like, I want to do this too, so we're going to do it together. It's hard for me too. You know, we're not perfect at this yet. And so ways to break the cycle of unconsciousness is to begin to prioritize, you know, what are things that we can start to say no to, so that we can have some purposeful planning around stillness, around gratitude, around affirmations, and really allowing those positive thoughts to build momentum, you know, in order to challenge that negativity. And I say this to kids too, right? We actually have to change our brain. And again, we go back to that brain concept, like, oh, we've got to grow that wise leader, you know, tell that security guard, like, hey, we don't need your negativity, right? I can do this. I'm capable. I can do hard things. Some of that growth mindset piece. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. I do want to finish with this one. So again, just thinking about the senses for kids and bringing awareness. So whenever I would have my little groups of 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds, and I always got the squirrely ones, you know, they would be identified and they'd be sent to Mrs. Skoog to have a special little group. And I was always like, yes, you know, they'd be like, yes, we're going to Miss Skoog. Pick them up and we'd all be really quiet ninjas, tiptoeing through the hallways. And we would kind of practice each of these things, bringing awareness, just having mindful walking, having a little practice of just mindful eating, of just practice listening. Like, what do we hear, right? Taking these little doses of practice for kids helps cultivate that presence and cultivate that awareness, because they really are intuitively sensitive. You know, they're so intuitively sensitive. So one practice that I like to do with kids is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, especially if they're just starting to get dysregulated. And I do this for myself too, just sidebar, real talk. When I'm starting to get dysregulated, I'm like, okay, ground. So I'll invite us to finish with this little exercise here. So we'll start with 5. I want you to look around and just see and notice 5 things in your mind. You can just say it in your mind. So it might be like pink card, blue pillow. So go do 5 things. Now 4 things you can touch. So just feel 4 different things. Now 3 things you can hear. Now 2 things you can smell. Take 2 deep breaths in through your nose. And now 1 thing you can taste. So I invite you to take a drink of water. Okay. So just notice how you're feeling just after that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, how that helped you. So this is really can be helpful for kids too. Okay. So as Thich Nhat Hanh says, when another person makes you suffer, it's because he suffers deeply within himself and his suffering is spilling over. He does not need punishment. He needs help. That is the message that he's sending. And I think what happens is that sometimes we get a message from other
Wait,
parents.
Julietta, can you turn that back so we can take to look at it again, please?
Of course, yes. So I think what happens is, you know, we get these messages from other parents that are like, you know, this is disrupting my kid, my experience. This is messing up our time. This other kid is taking more time away, or now they have to. Now we have to have this extra stuff. You know, it's just all these things that are like, it's affecting mine. And the shift is away from this punishment pace, but from a community, from an opportunity for us all to grow those seeds of compassion. And that when we can cultivate that in all of us, that any kind of challenge or, you know, cry for help is that it's that they need help, right? To build skills, to learn skills. That's the message that they're sending. Thank you. Sorry about that. Sorry for going so fast through that. Okay. All right. So it's late. We made it. We made it to the end. We've got about 10 minutes for questions, but I'll just wrap up my little slides here so you remember that we've got so many more resources here at Sproutable. We have an online video series for parents, one for teachers, one for nannies. We have coaching, private coaching. We have a spring workshop series. I'm doing one on siblings, one on anxiety, and one on growth mindset. So those are coming quickly down the pike. So make sure that you're subscribed to our mailing list or find us either on social media or on our website. That's me. That's the end. And yeah, so let's just take the last 10 minutes to answer any questions. And I just want to say thank you also.
Thank you so much, Julietta. I just wanted to share a quandary that Brandon and Angela posted in the chat. When a child has the language foundation, but not your language,
yes,
the ability to communicate it to you in a way you can understand, such as deaf versus hearing.
Yes, yes. And the child has the language, but not your language. Yeah. And really notice, I mean, that part of that frustration, like how hard that is to not be able, like that actual true frustration. And so tell me more about like some specific questions within that too, because that's so powerful.
Yeah, sure. Well, so in our experience, we experience this every day. So we work with kids who come from a variety of different backgrounds and mental health diagnosis and stuff, and lots of different experience within the deaf community as well. So some of the kids are siblings of deaf adults, some are children of deaf adults, and some are like grandparents of deaf adults. So we have a bunch of variety of different kids, which means they might have their experience with language, maybe their first exposure to English is okay, and now we're flipping the script and we're trying to have them pick up sign language.
Yes.
And we're seeing that maybe they experience it differently, but how do we approach that work with the kids when we can't understand each other? We can't understand what they're saying, we as deaf people and them as hearing children. So we do a lot of physicality, looking at physicality and what they're expressing, trying to look at the emotions, look at their faces and everything, but we can't hear, unfortunately, what they're saying. So we're trying to explain that, and kind of it's hard when you want to do that, and also how to manage and regulate those emotions and still do that social part. So that's still something we don't have that connection yet with the language.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that question. I think this is where the visual pieces are really powerful as well. So having like the visual faces and with the different feeling words, and even the kids that are pre-readers it can be really helpful to have that third party of just even saying like, I can like, it looks like you're frustrated, or my hunch is you're so mad, and to point at the pictures also and say, am I getting this right? Is this what it is? And they might be like, no, you're wrong, right? I'm here. I feel lonely. I feel left out. I feel frustrated over here. That is really powerful. And I will say, so there's one of the, actually Seattle schools, to their credit, they're not, some things I love them, but I also, there's a lot as a big district. One thing to their credit, some of their schools have the curriculum called Ruler, which is actually what my daughter kind of wrote here. But you don't have to have the curriculum to understand that it's basically when you come into the classroom, everyone just does a little assessment. It's like a self-check. Where am I at? So there's like the green zone. Actually, I think this one kind of shows it a little better. Like green zone might be calm, blue zone is kind of low energy. Then there's happy, the feeling pleasant, high energy. Angry, scared feels unpleasant, high energy. So there's an energy quadrant, and then there's like the feelings also. And so kids can have their own little like picture, like if they had their own little magnet or a little clip or something, and they just put them where they're at. Where are they feeling right now? And then noticing, and then a little marker at the middle of the day. Where am I now? Where are my feelings at? And then when I'm leaving, just to start to bring some of that awareness. So I think that might also be helpful to kind of bridge the gap. Does that help, Brangela?
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much.
Okay. I will absolutely share that children's book, all those lists and resources. I have a whole section on mindfulness, diversity, all of those things for sure. Yes. Yes, please. Yes. Share a book recommendation, please, Caitlin. What is it?
Okay, I'm gonna unmute and turn my video on. So this is not actually a children's book. It is a book. It is specifically, it's a manga. That it's called My Brain is Different. It is people writing about their own experiences with developmental, the word the book uses disorders, and I know that's controversial, and I just hit play on something I didn't mean to. Oh, pause. But like no, pause. Okay. I literally like started crying when I read it because I saw myself in it so much. There's even a chapter with someone who was on the autism spectrum who became a teacher for children with similar issues to her. And so if you are someone who works with neurodiversity and you want to be able to like hear people's perspectives, I really, really recommend it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Caitlin. I'm
Yeah.
looking, I'm like, where's my pen? I'm trying to write it down too.
I have an article I wrote about it that I could link if people are interested.
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
Yes.
Yes.
I will
Send
pull
it
that up.
to me too. Yes. So I know this is a lot. I'm honestly, I want to just be really transparent right now. I'm looking around at myself and I am like, it is a total mess. I see boxes, I see books, I have stuffed animals, I've got these little headphones. I am like seeing all of this stuff. So I'm realizing how much I kind of threw out there, but I hope that it integrated for you. I hope that it landed for you. And are there any other, oh yeah, I guess we're 9:27. So in order to know that it landed for you and that you had some takeaways, let's go back to our folded paper preview and do a little wrap up. So on those little 12 squares, do you have any ahas or tools or takeaways? Let's just go around and say our ahas or takeaways. So I'll invite you to go off of, if you're off of mute, or to either share it off of mute or to pop it in the chat. But I would love to hear some voices also if possible, or Brangela through Karen as well. I'd love to hear some takeaways too. Any takeaway? So why don't we raise a hand? Would anybody raise a hand for takeaway? Misty, go for it.
A bug and a wish. I kind of like that. And then making mindfulness or like taking breaths, like teaching them and making it part of like a habit. I know I have books and stuff about it, but I don't make it a habit. So, I talk to my son about it, but it's not a regular practice. So I like that. But the thing that really, really hit me is actually this quote that you just put up, the replace judgment with compassion. For me, it's been a big struggle, kind of similar to the other person's post about, the co-teacher, and I'm a co-parent. And so sometimes, this is just like hitting home right now. So it's a really good quote and I really like it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Misty. Is someone else share a takeaway? Caitlin, go for it.
I appreciate that you also talked about not just helping the child, but also helping the other children understand them and having them be part of the classroom. Because we, in my class this year, we have a child who is, she's visibly different. Like her language is very limited. She doesn't join the other, when we started talking about it with the other children, that was when they started to show more comfort with her. And it's gone from no one interacting with her except getting upset when she took their things, to literally a child sat down with her and went I want to play with Priscilla because Priscilla's fun. And that was such a huge moment.
Huge moment.
So yeah, so I appreciate you talking about the importance of building the community around them.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, let's take one more. Brangela. Oh, you're muted, Karen. Oh, that's because Lori's coming in.
Whoops. Okay, you ready? All right. Okay, for us, I love some of the discussion that we had about valuing the vocabulary and developing that in our children to be able to express themselves better through words. and what that may mean to themselves. They could act it out, the vocabulary, if need be. And that's giving us an idea of, well, we've talked about it among ourselves, that perhaps how do we work with like a deaf child that's neurodiverse? And if there's language deprivation that's going on as well, how would that look different among a deaf child that may have full access, or a deaf child that doesn't have full access to language? What do those things look like? Because you've got two different scenarios there. And as a deaf individual with a child now, I'm looking at the future of what a deaf adult might look like and have an intuitive sense about how to express themselves and how to regulate their emotions. I think it's important, and it's so fascinating to think about.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, and some of you put some things in the chat. Just encourage me to be confident about keep giving these positive messages. Yes. Ordering some new books, list of things to try, bug in the wish, lots of tips. Yes. And I'm glad. Okay, good, good, good. Yeah. Well, I will let you all go to bed. And I'm so happy to know you. And I will stick around as well for just a couple minutes if you do have any other final questions. But I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you for your generosity and your time and your questions and your participation with our activities and scripts and things like that. So
I enjoyed it immensely.
Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, have a good night, everyone.
Thank you so much, Julietta. Thank you, Lori and Karen, for interpreting this evening. And thank you all for being in community with us tonight. We hope to see you again soon.